people who run the school, who are responsible to run the school, they're open about having a student-centric learning happening. Identify the two concepts that you really loved or the two concepts that you found very difficult. If you were to teach yourself and your peers on the same concept, how would you do it? If your child is breaking down things, trust him or her enough that he's going to put it back together. And it's not just a waste of time because there is learning happening there, and you need to allow that space.
Welcome to India Innovates, a podcast where we dive into the stories of innovators shaping the future from the heart of India. I'm Vaishnavi.
And I'm Srinath. Together, we'll explore cutting-edge ideas and breakthrough technologies that are transforming communities, industries, and lives across the globe.
Whether it's a revolutionary startup, a pioneering researcher, or a visionary corporate leader, if they are innovating from India or for India, you'll hear about their stories here.
We'll also delve into the ecosystem that supports them, from the regulations and policies to the contributions of large companies that drive innovation at scale.
Let's uncover how India's unique environment is fostering a wave of creativity and ingenuity.
Hear stories of challenges, triumphs, and inspirations that have driven these changemakers to create and disrupt.
This is India Innovates, where innovation meets inspiration and India takes the center stage.
We strongly feel that education is going to have a great influence on our future innovators.
Today we have Mary Ouseph on the show. Mary is a teacher trainer and has been an IB teacher in Vienna, Botswana, Zimbabwe and India. She's led programs for the Cambridge University and served as associate faculty for Birmingham University.
Let's hear from Mary on her stories and experiences of what models of innovation have best worked for the West and how she brings it back to the schools of India.
Hello, Mary.
Hi.
Welcome to India Innovates.
Thank you.
And we've been having a lot of conversation with innovators, innovation in general. But we wanted to have a theme that's central for the future generations to come. And that's why we invite you to have throw a spotlight on education as a spectrum of the field. Today we want to discuss that. So what's your journey in the education space like?
First of all, thank you for having me here. I don't know if I'm an authority on innovation and education, but I think in my journey, which I'm just going to tell you, I have developed the skill of, or the skills required for one to be innovative, in the teaching space or otherwise. My journey started off as a teacher. I think the first time was visiting my daughter's classroom and being a voluntary parent to being an IB teacher for almost 15 years. And
where was this?
My husband was in the IFS, so we've been posted to different countries. We get posted every 3 years. And so I've taught in Zimbabwe, I've taught in Vienna, I've taught in Botswana, a little bit of exposure when I was in Iran. So multiple diverse audience and also different curriculum boards that I was exposed. But outside it was mainly one exposure to the IGCSE curriculum, the Cambridge one, and the rest was completely IB. And I love the IB philosophy. So the entire curriculum is based on a philosophy, is how I see it. And it was literally student-centric and student-led. Though teachers do have a very big role there. And so that's about 15 years of my life as a teacher outside. And then about 5 years back, when we moved back to India, I was in Indus International School for 5 years as a teacher. Then I moved to teacher training. Again, it's in-house in Indus. It's on campus there, 3 years there. Then I think somewhere I was reaching another saturation point and I decided, no, I need to do something for schools with, inside of India, like what Gandhiji said, that change, our souls are in the villages of India. And I thought, okay, if I can reach out, because, so that exposure with Life Educare, I was able to go to some of the schools, 2-tier and 3-tier schools in India. And later on, I think demands at home, my time that was required after my husband retired was where I decided to go independent. Because I realized that when you are with an establishment, you get to choose only those projects that the establishment wants. But for me, I think I had a different idea of what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be. And I decided that's possible only if I go independent. And now I'm an independent consultant. I work with schools at 3 levels. One is, certain schools, they want to go in for an annual transformational program, which means they want to identify, what their strengths are and strengths and challenges. Okay. So an audit is conducted. And then once we identify the strengths and challenges, then we move on to seeing, okay, how do we use the strengths to overcome the challenges? Or should we bring in something, new interventions to ensure that we're doing at least, we're raising the benchmark for our students with regard to effective learning via effective teaching. So that's what I'm doing. So that's why I training. And then the second part is the trainings that I do, freelance trainings for schools, IB schools, CBSE schools, IGCSE schools, across whoever, I feel that, yes, they are going to listen to me at least 10% of what I'm doing, then that's what I do with regard to schools. And I'm also working now with a few children with regard to ensuring that they develop the 21st century skills, the skills and competencies that we're always talking about, but they don't have the opportunity. So tied up with a couple of NGOs to do that. So that's my journey. Yeah.
So tell us, since you've seen so many schools outside and in India, what's really changed? Because I think most of our reference is how we've studied. And I don't think that pattern holds anymore, right? Because the world's changing so much. You can't just say, hey, you wrote learning, you go till 12th, and then okay, just do engineering, do something, and then after that you'll find a job, right? You're entering into a different world. How are schools thinking through this?
Is there a drastic change in the way students are learning? I would say no.
Okay.
But there are schools, progressive schools, who are looking at progressive schools, and individuals, I must say, because they are the ones who bring that change, who are looking at ensuring that the skills that we are talking about, the competencies that we are talking about, is actually brought to the students, and it is not just a marketing strategy by a school. So things are there are certain schools, like I told you, where you can see a difference, where children are happy to go in the morning because they're getting to do, there's experiential learning, there's hands-on learning, there's a lot of collaboration that takes place, and today's children love collaboration. It could be because of the nuclear family setup or whatever, but they love collaboration. And so there are schools that are ensuring that all of these happen.
This is more particular to Taiwan type of real place, or do you see this across different diverse urban, rural villages? How do you see this? Because in our country, I particularly feel it's so diverse, and in when you take India, I think double degree holders has been majority is what, last 2 generations of in families where there are degree holders first level and then double degree, like our parents. So you've been in this education field for say 15-20 years, and with India moving across at all levels, right, from grassroots to Tier 1, what do you think is the progress generally, right? Because we have various curriculums, and it caters to various kinds of people, various strata of people. So your work has primarily been in the IB space, right?
Yes.
So how do you see, generally as an educationalist, how do you see the vast contrast?
If I have to go back from where I started, so I started, by way of volunteering, by, being a consultant teacher. They call it a consultant teacher when you're not a full-time teacher. I would say that a lot happened in those schools outside, probably because of the kind of teacher, the preparedness of those teachers, the number of years that went into their training itself. However, when I came back to India, again, like I told you, I have seen it in a few schools. I don't want to name any school here right now, because I think, then we are not in a marketing space, right? So there are schools in India, and I'm not going to say it's just the Tier 1 schools. There are Tier 2 schools, and if you go to the interiors also, there are a couple of schools that I worked with. I saw that they wanted a progressive way of thinking. Yes, challenge with language was definitely there for them, but I could see that teachers were trying their very best to pick up the language. They were all constantly asking me for those online courses that they could do to enhance their learning, and the schools themselves, the promoters wanted change. Obviously that's why they would invite us for training. Yes, change is there, but I would also say that our system hasn't changed. So even if individuals want to change, let's say school founders want to change and they want to bring that progressiveness into their school, it's not happening because our system hasn't changed.
Could you define progressiveness?
So
what exactly is progressive?
Yeah. So what are these skills? What's progressive?
Yeah, what is actually, so let's say in certain geographies, percentile, meeting 90 plus percentile, or getting
having
state
that board
district,
outside, right?
yes, state district ranking. That's a big thing for them, and that's one of the marketing instruments that educational institutions go for. So I think within the last 5-10 minutes, you have brought up the word progressive quite a bit. So if you could just set a context, what's the theme institutions are after? What are they really considering progressive? Is it in line to what actually we need as progression, say 10 years down the line or 20 years down? Does it align with that need? If you could just set some context around that.
For me, when I say progressive, all I'm looking at is the fact that the school is or people who run the school, who are responsible to run the school, they're open about having a student-centric learning happening. Now, what do I mean by, I know I'm using a little bit of teacher jargon here or school jargon here, but then once a teacher, always a teacher, I would say. So when you say student-centric, you are allowing the students to go deep or to showcase their understanding of a topic or a concept taught in class the way they want it. How do you do it? You're providing choices. For example, I'll just, what I think throughout this journey, I think setting a context, I think will be a little more clear.
Sure.
So we have assessments that our students do in the classroom, right? So if there is an assessment, the option given to all of your 25 students or 30 students in your class is you could either showcase your understanding of this specific concept via an one-to-one interview with the teacher, or you could write an essay of this many words, or you could use graphics to do it. Use your computer, create graphics, or you could even create a storyboard, a comic strip, and what else did we do? You could create a chart or a collage of what you want. The only difference is all of them are assessed the same way because you're assessing them on a set criteria, what we call as rubric. Okay. So there's no question of a teacher not being able to assess a child who conducted a one-to-one interview with the teacher. A one-to-one interview would be where the teacher is completely prepared with the assessment, and you know very clearly what is the knowledge that you're assessing, you know very clearly what is the skills that you're assessing, you know very clearly what are the attitudes, so what we call as ASK, that is attitude, skills, knowledge. So the teacher is very clear, the rubric clearly indicates what we're assessing, what does a great piece of work look like, what can you do to get to that great piece of work, so obviously giving feedback. So this, for me, if this is allowed in a school, I feel then the school is following that progressive methodology of learning. So that's what I term my definition of a progressive school.
So does a lot of schools, because I'm trying to generalize this methodology and not keep it very exclusive to, where some of the privileged schools, example, right? So this methodology has been adopted across types of frameworks, curriculums, state of different states. Is that a trend that even a tier 3 city can, a tier 3 village or a certain district can adopt, or is it? I don't know if this is a
it's a very important question. Sadly, my answer to your question is also no, because we need to ask us, the government has brought in, the national education policy has a lot of, progressiveness in the way that we want teaching to happen in our schools in India, and this is across schools, not just the premium schools or the tier 2 and tier 3 schools. We're talking about all schools, having that equality in the way teaching needs to be done. But sadly, there are a lot of other problems that we have to ensure that this is there for all our students. And when you say, first let me look at, so the government through its national education policy is trying to bring, it's created that foundational level where the focus is on numeracy and building numeracy and literacy in our children. Because
What's
language,
numeracy?
so when you talk about numeracy and literacy, it is about, all of us have been exposed to math, we've learned numbers, but the question is, have we spent enough time for our children to make something called as number sense? Do we know what the number 2 actually stands for? When we ask children to subtract, do our children really know what it constitutes? That or is it just 2 minus 1 is 1? That rote learning system, or can our children make sense with that in the real world? One. But more importantly, I want to go to the literacy part, because the biggest hindrance to learning, and I would now go to say to innovation, is also language. The problem, the hindrance that we have, because I think from the time we are born, it's language that takes us forwards. We think in a specific language. I think the very thought, or even our actions, there is language to it. So therefore, the government has seen, there's something called as the ACER report. I don't want to go into that detail, because I think then we are going to digress. The report shows that most of our schools, our children are at a reading level, a 5th grader is at a reading level of a 2nd grader. And we can find a lot of reasons for it, but at the end of the day, we need to bring our children to a 5th grade reading level that is required. So the government has brought in, where it specifically has told the early learning schools, where you need to focus on building the literacy and the numeracy skill in our students before you get them to write. Because the first thing our parents want, I think that's also another challenge, because parents, the minute they put their children in school, did my child write today? What did he write? Without understanding that I first need to develop the fine motor skills, the skill of holding a pencil, that there's a specific skill that goes into it. So all of these things are something that needs to be focused in the early years. So you have that is mentioned in the national education policy. I'm pulling out the key components.
So very recently they also moved the age by 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, so that's
for the
also
minimum enrollment.
Yes,
age, right?
exactly. So the categorization, the age categorization is also there. Then the second component that really stands out for me, again, like when I'm talking, it's a very personalized key factors that I'm pulling out. There are a lot of great factors there. I like the fact that we are moving into an outcome-based and a competency-based teaching in the class. Now, let me explain what that means. When you're talking about outcome, earlier it was always about objectives. So objectives was always about, okay, here is, today I'm going to take the same topic that you spoke about earlier. All my children will understand the concept of germination. Okay. But now when you're talking about outcomes, we are talking about how is a student in my class going to demonstrate that he or she has understood the concept of germination.
While schools are a great place for learning, our 21st century demands more innovators. How do we get more innovators? People who are able to look at situations, understand opportunities, come back and say, oh, is there something I can build? Take that leap forward, actually have the courage. That requires a very different a set of skills than just rote learning, right? So what should we do?
I'm again as a teacher going back to the school, okay? But because what should we do has to be from the school. Yes, there is a small percentage where parents should definitely, bring in their support. But I'm again going back to school. And if you actually notice, Srinath, in a lot of times, if you look at India, I don't know if you watch the Better India channel, you will actually see that most of the innovations that come there, we call it jugaad. Okay,
I know,
and there is a very negative connotation in our head when we look at when we term a great creation jugaad. We look at invention, we look at innovation only when it comes from the great masters, like a Steve Jobs, comes up with something, or you have an Elon Musk coming up with something. So therefore, for me, I feel that innovation, the first point where innovation comes is when there is necessity. Because I think we've all grown up hearing this one proverb: necessity is the mother of all needs, and that is why you're seeing wherever you see these innovations or jugaad as we term it is from the interiors of India and world over. You see in Africa, I don't know. I'm sure I don't know if you've read of this child or heard of this child, the boy who harnessed the wind, William Kambakwa. You will see that there was a necessity there. And that necessity drives them day in and day out, because it is about solving a problem either for themselves or for somebody that they are very closely connected to. This child, the boy who chased away the lion, I don't know if you've heard of him, Richard Turere. It's a beautiful story. So what was happening from Africa, because I have a great connect with Africa, and this can be looked at any context. So what he found was that the lions were, during the night, the lions would just walk into their, their little space and eat up their cattle, and cattle is very expensive in Africa. So he tried. He wanted to help. At the same time, look at the connection with the environment. He did not want to kill the lions, and this comes because you know that living in harmony with the environment is very important. So what did he do? The first day, he he tried to create a scarecrow. Nothing happened. The lions still came and ate the cattle. The second time, he made the cattle den very dark, but the smell obviously brought the lions back to the cattle. Then one day he was walking towards the den, and he was using his torch, and he realized that the day he used the torch, the lions did not come, and something clicked in him. And then he started just collecting, going to the to the landfills there, going to all of these small stores where you have things coming from the third world countries being dumped there, and getting all kinds of material. In fact, he also broke his mother's transistor, and let me tell you, in Africa, transistors are very important because that's one way of entertainment that they have. He broke it up, got bashed up, and he finally created some kind of a lighting system that drove the lions away. So the lions were not killed. So that for me is an innovation.
But how do we train a generation of innovators?
I'm coming to that. So if you see now in India also, let me come back to India. You have the school student Siddhant from Hyderabad. When he heard about the Nirbhaya case, what did he do? His mom pulled him a couple of times and said, let's go in for the candle sittings and things like that. He went. But it didn't stop there. He wanted to find a solution for this problem. And he tried using his understanding of physics, concepts of physics, and finally he created something called as the electro shoes. Okay, after 17 trials, he was successful. And all you need to do is, we need to just wear the shoe, and somebody is attacking us, one kick, and it triggers, information is carried to the police station. But more importantly, the attacker is hurt via electrocution happening there. Now, what is the problem? You have a child here who has created something, but how many of us have even heard of him? which government, which organization has taken this forward to say, here is a brilliant idea, now let us take this, bring it forth into society, because if not in this raw form, in a different form, in an improved form. So what I see in these children when I look at it, is that they all have what we call as this creative confidence. Our schools need to bring in some kind of genuine project-based learning. Schools do have project-based learning. CBSE also allocates marks for students.
What is project-based learning?
So when you talk about project-based learning, it could be about identifying a problem in society. It could be my own problem that I have that I want to find a solution. It could be a problem in society, or it could be in a community that I'm living in. It could be anything.
Now let's look at a mirror concept of the same, where certain boards or certain education systems that may not have such mandates to drive these frameworks that eventually build the ability for a student to have culminate all these skills into becoming an innovator, to your question.
Yeah.
Even if not a student becomes that bright of a star, I also want to look at this from a society angle, where not 1 or 2 or 20 kids get access to this kind of a framework. What are some of the efforts taken by the teachers or classroom level frameworks to say mass adoption of critical thinking or creative thinking, right? It might not happen 1:1 as a teacher, or 1:, even 10 or 15 as a matter of fact. What are some of the themes that are going around where ratios are say 1:30, 1:40,
Which is more realistic
which
in
is
most
more
classes.
realistic in larger part of the geographies, right? So the 100 kilometers beyond the capital or a city, the ratios
They're
are very different.
Very different.
So what are some of the themes and ways in which education explorations are happening?
CBSE, again through the National Education Policy, has brought in a mandate of project-based learning that is important and
Sure.
a compulsion for
Talk us
schools.
through about
Okay, so,
matriculation,
yeah.
state boards, and
Yeah.
how is that happening?
I tell so when I go for these trainings, not all of the trainings are for teachers in a premium school, as I mentioned earlier. All I tell teachers is that when you're giving your students homework, when you're bringing, when you're teaching a concept in the classroom, just bring in a couple of questions into your planning, where you are asking, for example, let us say that I'm teaching a concept in history, and I just add one question where I'm asking the students, what do you think would be the situation like if the same is repeated in today's times?
So I think then most of
That-
it becomes a interaction between a student and
It's always.
And it's also giving space to imagine. Right?
Also, there's this one thing, no, that more towards likeliness of a child being good at a subject is because they tend to like the teacher more.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So
That
it
is
is.
the
It
real,
constantly is. My
context.
teacher is my role model. I'm
Yeah.
sure Vaishnavi. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure Srinath can answer because I don't know how old your child is. But I'm sure there have been at least 90% of the times when you've tried to teach your child something, it's like, Dad, that's not how it is. My teacher taught me differently, and I will follow my teacher's methodology, even if yours is better.
Yeah.
Right? So a teacher is a role model, and that's why the teacher in me keeps coming out, because I have experienced that relationship that one can share. One builds in the classroom, and they are the ones who can be that change maker.
Because I have seen fantastic videos of government school teachers who probably don't even have access to such, she was saying science corner, experimental corners, they don't have that, right? One teacher is teaching 5 subjects. And in fact, I have first-hand witnessed where teachers take a personal interest in incentivizing parents to send their kids to school. Right? Come up with great and interactive ways of teaching.
Yeah.
Very interesting folks are there. So I agree that more than beyond frameworks, the real innovation comes from teachers too.
Yeah, but it's also the teachers giving you permission to think, right? You don't necessarily have to write what's the rote learning part. Probably giving you space to say, hey, go explore something, come back. We'll sort of do this together.
Providing choices to the child,
Providing
because I
choices.
might be very good when it comes to sketching a concept.
Okay.
You might be somebody who's a visual learner who wants to watch a video and probably even create one. So providing that space. Now again, maybe when I say creating a video, I may not have the resources, but then you do have computer labs is also another compulsory requirement in most schools.
More
So
schools.
yeah, so I think it's about providing choices and providing opportunities it need not even be that you have to do it. As a teacher, I'm talking about a 2-tier school and a 3-tier school. If we or a school that claims that we don't have the time to do this in our classrooms.
Yeah, that is a very important piece.
I
Because
have to finish my portion.
I have to finish
Exactly.
my portion. In most cases, they borrow, physical training class, the periods.
The one class that kids are looking out for.
And library periods and all that. So coming back to how is extracurricular activities shaping up innovation parts of beyond class?
There are schools that have clubs where children are then able to pursue their areas of interest. It could be the robotics, it could be a STEM lab, and it could also be just a free space. Okay, a free space for me to do or to pursue what I like to pursue, probably within a specific concept that I've just learned, or anything that I want to do. Wow. Free play, as we call in the kindergarten, is exactly what we also say, that free play is required for our children, even in the senior. The tinkering is very important, because a lot of questions come in your head when you kind of, whether you're successful, there are questions of why was I successful. Okay, I'm making a note of it. If there's a failure in what you've created, then the question is, why did it fail this time? What more can I do?
So clubs and
Yes.
extracurricular.
So there are a lot of schools that have it. Now, for those schools who do not have that kind of an infrastructure, some of the suggestions that I have seen, we've also brought in, and we've seen that they work. Like I told you, the annual transformation program, I've seen where it has helped children, because they come and tell me, Miss Mary, I'm so happy I did this and I did that. For us as adults, it might seem small achievements, but for them, it's a huge achievement.
So could you give us
So
an example?
a space in your school auditorium, okay? A space outside the classroom where you're letting the child out for at least once a week. Think about the concept you've learned. Think about how you can apply it. Or if you were to teach this concept to somebody in the class who's slightly, not able to understand, how do you think is the best way to teach? Go out, you make your plan, and come and teach this child.
I would want probably for us to understand better this going back to annual transition programs,
Transformation, yeah.
programs. In your experience, you also mentioned you worked with the Tier 2, Tier 3 also, right? So if you could give us, this was the before, and then the school went through the transformation program with you, and then this is how it
What happened
changed,
later.
what happened later.
Okay.
That will be a little more effective, because we understand how Tier 1 schools work.
Yeah.
We know
I
that
think
there are
that's familiar
frameworks.
territory.
That's
for
very
us.
familiar. They have the infrastructure. So let's keep that aside a bit. And then if you could really help us understand the transformation in Tier 2, Tier 3 education, especially with your work, that will set some ideas.
So children hate holiday homework. Okay, especially when it is at the end of the academic year.
True.
So one of the schools that I am working with, I started off at the tag end of the previous academic year.
Okay.
And this was, and the school is very clear that homework has to be given. The request came from the parents, please give our children homework, otherwise they're going to forget about everything. So the way we structured homework, okay, as simple as that is, so be it a Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, it's irrelevant. What did we do? We told the children, because we wanted them to revisit the concept. So we told them, in a math class, identify the 2 concepts that you really loved, or the 2 concepts that you found very difficult. If you were to teach yourself and your peers on the same concept, how would you do it? Okay, that's your little math homework. You can use any resources. You can draw, you can write, you can record a speech on your mobile phone. All kids have their mobile phone post-COVID. That's one plus point, I would say. I mean, it has its own negatives, but it has its own value also if it is used the right way. So that was the math homework. The same science homework was given. And the beauty of this homework given was the entire school got the same homework. You didn't have to create different homework, because it is about each child, each grade, contextualizing it at their level. And a school that claimed that in the previous years, if they had 40 children in their class, 10 of them came back with homework, we had 25 students on an average, if you calculate from grade 1 to grade 10 on an average, who came back with their homework. Success point 1. So that's automatically data. How well did they do it? For me, it was a process of learning.
So what was the transformation per se?
What happened was, the school conducted a kind of a gallery walk. So that was a suggestion that I had given. Now, why the gallery walk? We wanted our students from grade 1 to grade 10 to see that the same task can be done wherever you are. It is just the concept and the level of the concept that is changing. Okay. So children were able to see that, and all this is coming from the reflection that they did after the whole project.
So Mary, if you look at other countries, if you look at US, which is known for innovation, China does its own set of innovation, you have Finland, you have all of these. They have their own models. What are they doing for their children that we should learn from and adapt for India?
I think it is the freedom to learn hands-on the way I want to learn. One, because that's what I saw when we were abroad, when my daughter was learning in the schools. Marks was never even mentioned. I mean, it's great that if you score well, okay, but it was the skills that was again being assessed. So I think that's one thing. Secondly, I think the second point was that the assessment, the grade is not important, but my process of learning is important. And, the freedom at home, the freedom in school to be who I am, to tinker. Tinkering, I think, is a big requirement in our schools and in our homes, because I don't want to put the entire responsibility on schools, because especially here in India, the content that needs to be covered is huge. So teachers genuinely do not have the time to give that liberty of time. And therefore, I think even parents, have a key role here, where if your child is breaking down things, trust him or her enough that he's going to put it back together. And it's not just a waste of time, because there is learning happening there, and you need to allow that space. I just want to put it in two frames. What happens is you need a child to be able to say, I want to do something, because we are all good people. Our children have great hearts. They're very empathetic. So I want to do, the minute you introduce a problem in the school, the first thing is, Miss Mary, I want to do something. But the gap between I want to do and I know to do, that gap needs to be filled. And freedom, choices, resources, that's something, and of course, without doubt, the infrastructure. But I'm not going to focus a lot on infrastructure, because a lot of inventions have happened with minimal infrastructure. But I think it is the freedom to do things the way I want to do it.
To really experiment.
Yes, allow me to experiment, because in the name of experiment, what is happening in our school is simple demonstrations done by the teacher.
Yeah, I keep saying we don't do experiments, we do validations, because you say aim and then you say finally saying this is the outcome, right? So I pretty much know there's a formula.
Yes.
Right. Rather than coming back and saying, I don't know, real life experiment, and all of us learn as businesses that we don't know the outcome. Right? So the whole point of an experiment is I start on a gut feel, I sort of learn along the way. I might be wrong.
That is an
but I keep going
innovator's
back.
playbook in a way.
I think in most of it in life, but in school you're taught saying you know the outcome. I think that
Can I
shift
tell you
itself.
something? What was the biggest plus point for children with COVID? Yes, literacy, language learning was impacted, writing was impacted, but science learning was amazing. And the simple reason, and this is where I'm connecting to what is happening in the West End with us. The simple reason that science learning thrived is because children were conducting experiments with things that they found in their mother's kitchen, in their kitchen, or some things at home. They were able to connect the concept that they were learning, and even apparently the data shows that the exam results for science papers was much better when compared to the other papers that children did. And so that, I think, is a clear indicator. You don't need data here. You don't need data analytics here. This is the data where you allow me to do things the way I want it. You have set a success criteria, and for me to reach there, I will reach there come what may. So I try and again, because I have that liberty of time and I have the liberty of space, and of course the resources are available there. So simple resources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking forward again, we're entering a world where everyone's talking about ChatGPT, and that's today, right? We don't even know what's going to come in the next 10 years by the time these children grow, 10, 15 years. And I'm sure there's a lot more AI coming up. And we're also wondering what sort of, the jobs of today are absolutely not going to be there tomorrow, right? What skills should children learn today to help them succeed in the future?
Key skill for me, I would say, is thinking skills, which can be categorized in many different ways. So even, let us say, a child is using GPT for an assessment, or a teacher is using the support of AI. If there is a scope, where I can analyze what I have just read or what has been presented to me, I think that skill by itself is one. Secondly, I always say this in my training, is enabling the child or creating situations in your classroom to develop, even by using technology. You could use ChatGPT to get those case studies or create case studies. It does it, right? Is to enable children to develop a dialectical thought process. What do I mean by a dialectical thought process? Is I'm able to think from the perspective of the person who is, let me give you a context. We're talking, a lot is happening right now with regard to Palestine and Israel. What is the dialectical thought process that you need to bring in here? Is to help the child to either via videos, and there are beautiful videos on YouTube, so teachers don't even have to create it, it's there. Show them the Palestine perspective, okay? And then have a couple of questions to say, why do you think the Palestinians should be allowed their right to their land? Okay. Now, show them a couple of videos from the Israeli perspective. Let them analyze the video, and then ask your child to write. The same child is writing the same answer. Now, tell me, why should an Israeli be given the right to claim what they are claiming? Okay, how would you deal with this situation if you were the head of United Nations? So I've understood the problems from two sides. Okay, it's not a one-sided approach, because these children are tomorrow's policy makers, and policies are also, policy should be considered as an innovative approach when you're coming up with new ideas. I think that's another point we can discuss. Therefore, the child is enabled in the classroom, or even parents, where I'm looking at things from different perspectives and I'm arriving at the best possible solution. The beauty of this is the child is also able to understand sometimes there is no one way, there is no one answer, and that's very important.
Probably no way to keep everyone happy.
Exactly.
Right, which is also okay.
So this is the point that I want to drive back as a closure, that innovation or forces such as education do not have to create absolute innovators. By and large, we feel, okay, innovators means they have to come up with a successful recipe, have to have a successful exit, create a startup, create a product that, all that story is there. But education is such a free-flowing form of a force that I particularly feel can create many people, set people up for many in many forms. By that I mean, okay, somebody who probably comes from a very challenging economic strata also at 35, 45, when other factors in life happen, will be able to innovate, for instance. Or on the contrasting side, a child who's had IB, whatever, right, the best of form of infrastructure also might just be an executive through their life. So it's not like only these forms of education or these levels of education can create innovators out of it, is what. But I think education is a powerful force if done correctly and if democratized in a way. To a large part of society influx. See, I'm from Tamil Nadu, and I can speak for Tamil Nadu, right? So a couple of generations behind, when late CMs like Mr. Kamaraj and all, they had done huge shift in the way education is perceived today, right? So different government policies like midday schemes, uniforms, and it literally had that mass effect on how education is perceived, and one of the states
brought a lot of children to school, right?
Yes, brought a lot of children to school, made education mainstream, and so there are a lot of societal influxes also that come with it. That's my takeaway. So as far as it's available, I think from an innovation point of view, people would pick up as the life goes by, but that's my takeaway.
Yeah, for me, I think the ability to hold multiple perspectives, come back and say, okay, there might not be one right answer. I'm giving the freedom to experiment.
Yeah.
Brings that confidence, that creative confidence in the child, that I think moving away from the current system where I always have to be right. There's someone measuring me. There is an answer, there is a question, and then there is an answer, and only if I get it right am I okay. Otherwise, I'm not okay. Right? We're moving away from that to a world where we are saying, hey, we don't know the questions either that are going to get answers. All
That
we
is
can
life
come back.
in itself.
Yeah, but even in education, if you're able to prepare that, where you come back and say, you don't know the questions, you don't know the answers, but you have the confidence to come back and say, okay, I'll figure out.
Yeah.
Right? I think that sets a base. And
And
probably
that's a
innovation
mindset.
will be
Earlier
an outcome
also,
from
as
that.
I said, innovation is it's a mindset of how do I deal with failures. We've spoken to multiple innovators through this podcast. It's a way of mindset. It's a playbook that you keep experimenting, iterating, failing, success. It's a playbook of. It's not like there are 100 formulas that you try, and one formula is your innovation.
Yeah, but just giving that freedom, I think, will make a huge difference.
And I think we need to, as a society, redefine the word innovation and creativity. I think there's a big flaw there, because we see creativity as that you create something unique and something beautiful, but then that's not creativity. I think creativity is even that simple way, or the ability to take action, because I have a set skills and competencies that I have built in me, or somebody has helped build in me over time. I have the ability to see things. I have the ability to notice things, and then it goes beyond, where I have the ability to actually observe using certain parameters. These are the skills that needs to be built in the school.
Yeah.
And very adult terminologies that we feel does not fit into a school. I'll tell you what stops our children from being creative. Two things, and I'm sure many people say that these are adult words and it's more with adults, but absolutely not. One is the imposter syndrome that we have, and the second one is what we call as the Dunning-Kruger effect. Imposter syndrome is, we are in the times of influencers, and we have some excellent students in our class, and we are constantly shy to share our thinking in the classroom and outside, present our pieces of work in the classroom, because we feel that, oh, this is the child who's always been told who's excellent and I don't match. Therefore, through reflections, through introspections in the classroom. And I'm so happy that the National Education Policy is talking about bringing reflections into the classroom. They want children also to write reflections and teachers. Because reflection and introspection is so deep that children again over time realize that if A in my class is unique, I am also unique. Okay, I'm not assessing myself against A, but I'm assessing myself against me yesterday. I think that's so important. And same with the Dunning-Kruger effect. I find that also very strong in the classroom because I see it.
What is that?
So the Dunning-Kruger effect, you're constantly being told by your parents and by your teacher, hey, you're great, Srinath. My God, your debating skills, your communication skills, amazing. So I fall into that trap created by society and the people around me, and I start thinking I'm great. Therefore, I don't raise the benchmark for myself because I don't know what that better benchmark is. I stop learning because I'm the best. Everybody's telling me. I just wrote an essay and I've got a 10 out of 10. Nobody told me where the flaws are because nobody read that essay. Great handwriting. These are the flaws that we have. So therefore, how do we ensure that children don't develop these? Again, assessment with feedback. Telling your children, you know what, this was a great piece of work. Do you think you could add? And give them a set of challenging questions. And those challenging questions then help this child understand, oh, there's more to learning. It's not, great learning doesn't stop at where I am and what others have told me. There's a lot more to do.
Yeah.
And that lot more to do is what is differentiating that child in the class from where he was to where he could be. I think these two things I feel is very important for us, to bring into our classrooms. Now, whether you're tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, you can do this in any classroom with any child. So therefore, infrastructure is irrelevant because we are talking about developing competencies. And competencies come from within because you've been repeatedly working on skills. So what has to come from within will come whether the infrastructure is there or not. It's irrespective.
On
isn't
that
it?
note, Mary, thank you so much for being our guest today. And
No,
I think
know.
we
It's
uncovered
my
different
privilege.
dimensions of
Yeah.
what innovation could be and how
I'm hopeful we have the next generation of entrepreneurs,
Oh,
innovators.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Right
she
from
said,
India.
competencies that it will come
We're
from
building the right
within.
competencies. Yeah.
Thank you again, Mary.
Thank you so
for-
much.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.